right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm Taylor Dolan. We're continuing on the draft series, seeing some possibilities at that number 10 pick for the Chicago Bears. And then we'll talk a little bit of prospects that maybe they can get in later rounds. I'm joined today by Zach Seyko. He is the host for the Locked On Nittany Lions. Zach, I really appreciate you hopping on with me.
Yeah, appreciate the invitation, and we'll see if Chicago ends up drafting any of these Penn State players.
Yeah, we have a current Penn State Nittany Lion and Jaquan Brisker on our roster that I'm personally a very big fan of. I love Brisker. I love the energy he brings. Unfortunate, had concussion. A lot of dealt with that last year, but he seems like he's healthy and he's ready to be back. So he just adds a whole other level of something on the football field that you like to see. But I want to start with Tyler Warren. That's the big one. I know Abdul Carter is that number one ranked Penn State player right now. We'll talk a little bit about him, but unless the Bears trade up, they're probably not getting Abdul Carter. But Tyler Warren is somebody who they have that possibility of maybe landing at that number 10 spot for Chicago. And there are some questions of if that is one of the bigger needs for the Bears, but with a new regime and kind of the way they're building things, you may see them go after best player over maybe need. So we'll see how this draft kind of works out with how they're doing with now Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen as the main guys taking over. But Warren in high school, if you kind of go back, it's kind of cool. He was a multi-sport athlete. He lettered in football, basketball, and baseball. So that kind of shows the athleticism and and everything he can do. And when you talk about football, he was a dual threat quarterback. So he sees the field probably a little bit different, which I also think is beneficial when you're talking about some of these players in the NFL now. But 5 years at Penn State, each year I feel like you saw more and more from Tyler Warren, obviously this last year being his big year. But tell us a little bit about the start when Tyler Warren first gets to Penn State to this final year and what you've seen the most from him through those 5 years.
Right, and that's why Chicago is such an intriguing spot because Ben Johnson comes in and you already have Cole Kmet. So, but two tight ends, it can work if you get just players, just game changers, and that's what Tyler Warren is. So why he's always taken these progressive steps forward is because it's always been a crowded tight end room for Penn State. Some Bears fans might know Brenton Strange. He was a second-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then following that, Theo Johnson, fourth-round pick to the New York Giants. So two other NFL-capable players, right? Brenton Strange has been back and forth the starting lineup because of Evan Engram, but has taken over some games as his role gradually increased. And then Theo Johnson became a starter right out of the gate as a rookie. So Tyler Warren gets that monster season after there isn't a battle for reps between three capable NFL players, NFL future starters, all at once at Penn State. And he was in the Heisman voting. It was more than just, he was a focal point in Penn State's offense. No, he finished 7th as a tight end in Heisman voting. He was truly a bulk of probably Penn State, 80% of Penn State's passing attack.
Yeah.
And he's just so versatile. On the same play against USC, he can snap the football, run the streak down the field, and win a jump ball in double, triple coverage practically. He can take direct snaps at quarterback. Is he the most proficient passer? No, but you can do so many things with the trickery of it that this was going to be very appealing to Ben Johnson, who's just an offensive guru. He's just an offensive mastermind. So the appeal of Tyler Warren is certainly there despite Cole Kmet already being in the fold. I don't think, the Bears certainly have other needs, but they're addressing them through trades and free agency. So Tyler Warren's kind of that next step to help Caleb Williams, which I think it's a slam dunk selection if they're able to do it.
And I think that's where the conversation goes. A lot of us are just banging the table at this point of you don't want to keep having excuses. And you talked about, the Jaguars drafting Brenton Strange. I also cover the Jags, so I'm very familiar with Brenton Strange down here. But he's going to be the guy this year. Evan Engram and the Jags parted ways, so he's not going to be around. And I really liked what you saw from Brenton Strange later in the second half of the season. But it is interesting when you mentioned that of what Ben Johnson does and that guru kind of offensive genius size. He has Penei Sewell throwing passes, so I wouldn't be surprised if you put someone else like that out there. And I do want to get to some of that specifics in a little bit, but I did want to talk about his relationship with Drew Aller because I think that I know a lot of people weren't crazy high on Drew Aller. He's one of those guys to me that some games you felt like he had everything that you possibly needed to be a successful quarterback and sometimes it just wasn't quite there. But you clearly saw that relationship between them two last year be a, like to your point, the big focal point of that offense. And then when you're talking about the yardage wise, he goes from 422 yards in 2023 to over 1,200 yards in 2024. Only one more touchdown though. So let's talk about that a little bit, that relationship between him and Drew Aller and his role in the offense this last season.
And I've asked Tyler Warren about that specifically. It's just the repetition. It's just doing it over and over and over, building chemistry, building trust. And even if you aren't in the starting lineup, you're doing that every day at practice. You're doing it through the reps. So that's something that Tyler Warren is very keen on. It's the team first mentality. So that extends to the relationship with the quarterback, meaning that whatever we have to do that's necessary here to make sure that, hey, if I end up with the Bears, Caleb Williams and I are in sync at all times. And that's something that, I mean, specifically, I had to ask Tyler Warren that it seems like Drew Aller always knows where you are in the football field. And he's just like, maybe it seems that way, but it's just, this is just kind of second nature for us. It's just something that we practice so many times that we almost know by proxy, okay, he's supposed to be here at this given situation. So even if I'm not the main target on a given play, there's an alibi for Drew Aller to go with. So Tyler Warren's a team first player, regardless of who the quarterback is going to be. So this extends beyond the Chicago Bears. It's just that Warren will do what is necessary to help the offense, help the quarterback, and get into that rhythm, that chemistry that, you know, you see with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. You see with, I know it's the Detroit Lions, but Sam Laporta and Jared Goff, where it's just like, wow, how do they find them outside of the scripted plays? And that's what Tyler Warren can do. And I imagine that Caleb Williams is going to be able to put in the work and want to put in the work to get into that kind of rhythm.
Yeah, if there's anybody who is probably one of the more competitive people in the NFL, it's definitely Caleb. You saw that multiple times last year. When you talk about, because there's a lot of strengths we talk about with Tyler Warren, and it goes everything that you want to connect to being a tight end. But the route running, I feel like, isn't talked about enough. And it's something that sometimes in the draft profiles, I hear people talk about that and how well he can kind of adjust on the fly. And to your point, maybe that's part of why he could be, whenever Drew Aller really needed him, he was able to do that. But talk about a little bit about that side of Tyler Warren's game.
Well, it's the versatility of the routes. It's the short, it's the intermediate, it's the long range routes as well, because he can run a streak down the field, and when in double triple coverage, he can take a screen pass for 20, 30 yards. He's faster than most. I mean, he's kind of in that, I think he's in that above average range. Is he that Eric Ebron, sometimes Evan Ingram speed, maybe just a hair slower, but it's that deceptive speed where it's okay, he can take a football 30, 40 yards on a quick screen, on a tight end screen or a check down, and he'll run through you. He'll spin around you. He'll hurdle over you. So it's that versatility to be able to do more than just, okay, he'll run a simple in or out route, 10 yards. He'll secure a catch. He's not just a possession receiver.
Yeah.
He's a do everything tight end. Can line him up on the line of scrimmage. You can put him in the slot. Heck, I'd even put him in the boundary. I mean, Penn State used him at quarterback, for crying out loud. He would take direct snaps with the intention of, all right, I'm just going to run what is essentially a halfback quarterback draw, because that's the position he was in that given formation. It's just that you need to get the football into Tyler Warren's hands.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, special plays will happen.
Yeah, that's something also, Zach, I'm a Notre Dame fan, and while I was absolutely terrified of Tyler Warren going into that game, I was like, you got to find a way. You're not going to stop him, but you got to find a way to slow him down as much as possible. I think Notre Dame, at least towards the end of the game, were able to find ways to do that, but it's not easy. It's definitely a full game plan to try and figure out how to slow down Tyler Warren. One of the things, going back to what you were saying, and Ben Johnson and his creativity and that two tight end, you already have Cole Kmet. This is why a lot of people have the concern of taking a tight end at number 10. But to me, if you go back and you look at Ben Johnson and his time in Detroit, obviously Sam Laporta we talk a lot about, but they also just got another tight end a couple years before that in Brock Wright out of Notre Dame. And he ran a lot of 12 personnel in Detroit. I want to say it was like 27%, 30%, something like that he would run that 12 personnel. And so obviously in those situations, you'll want another tight end. And bonus, Tyler Warren's familiar with that at Penn State when it comes to being able to have, or maybe what he's done at Penn State will transfer into being able to run some of those 12 personnel, two tight end sets. So tell us a little bit about that, the familiarity of just the different schemes he can also run and how that could transfer to that kind of 12 personnel setup.
Oh yeah, and he's like I said, he's been sharing the reps before. It
Yeah.
was there. I mean, Penn State would run 3 tight end sets when they
Yeah.
had Brenton Strange, when they had Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren all at once. And Tyler Warren was still, his role wasn't as large, but he was still doing those quarterback draws and trick plays as a redshirt freshman
Yeah.
with 2 other NFL caliber tight ends within the offense. So that speaks volumes. He was described as the best kept secret in college football for a while, when it was Brenton Strange had moved on, and then it was Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren. And the chatter, if you paid really close attention to Penn State, is that Tyler Warren's going to explode. So it was that redshirt junior season where, okay, we're still waiting for it. And then it was, he took over and became a superstar player. So it's the familiarity of being able to share the reps, because the Bears offense is going to be so dynamic. You're going to have Caleb Williams has tons of options to go with. It's not like Tyler Warren's coming into another Penn State situation where, yeah, the ground game's solid. 2 NFL future running backs with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Maybe the Bears take one of them in the future. Who knows? But Tyler Warren's going into a situation where, yeah, it's going to be a pretty balanced offense from the wide receivers to the ground game to Caleb Williams just taking the football himself, because he has dual threat capability. So he can do anything. The Bears, though, Cole Kmet has shown those flashes of being that game-changing tight end,
Yeah.
which is why, I mean, I play fantasy football just like a lot of other people, and Cole Kmet just one week will explode for that. It's like, there it is, that's it.
Yeah.
And Tyler Warren can give you that too. So it just really adds to the Bears situation, because the offense just gives you another weapon, because he's shown that when he is the focal point, he can take over games. And now you just kind of add that to an offense where Cole Kmet can do the same thing. And whatever you want to do, or DJ Moore at wide receiver, Caleb Williams at quarterback as a runner. So you're adding a game changing weapon who can take over alongside other weapons who can do the same thing.
Yeah, and it will be fascinating to see how Ben Johnson does all of this, because you're going from a Jared Goff to a Caleb Williams, which are obviously 2 very different style quarterbacks. And you have, I think Detroit, obviously, you talk about Sam Laporta, you talk about their run game with Montgomery and with Jahmyr Gibbs. And the Bears don't have quite that run game right now. I'm guessing my estimation is that they're going to take a running back at some point in this draft. Don't know if that's going to happen, but I would guess it does. And so if, aside from that, if they get a guy like Tyler Warren at 10, you're talking about Tyler Warren, Cole Kmet, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore as your offensive playmakers. And that just, like, it sounds really, really fun, especially like you said, with what Caleb can do and what Ben Johnson can bring out. I want to jump over to the defensive side of the ball a little bit. The Bears, I mentioned Jaquan Brisker at the top of this. I love Brisker. I love Kevin Byard. I think our safety room's really good. The problem is, I think that when we saw Brisker these last 2 seasons, missed times in both years because of concussions and back-to-back years, it brings some red flags up. You start to kind of think about, what do we do next if this doesn't work out, or if Brisker goes down. You don't want to have what happened last year, where Brisker went down and the safety room took a big hit for a few weeks, and you don't want to have that. So having someone come in that could kind of fill that void if there is another injury, or if they don't want to re-sign him in a couple years, you have that backup plan at safety position. I'm not quite sure they'd draft someone as high as what Kevin Winston will go at, because I do think he's still going to be a pretty high pick, but it's a possibility. I don't know exactly what they're thinking, especially with Dennis Allen and how he kind of likes to build his defenses. But let's talk about him a little bit. The big thing is the injury, obviously, and how healthy he is from that injury. So tell us a little bit about that and what you know from that side of things, because it was an ACL tear, right?
It was, yes, it was an ACL tear. It wasn't a full ACL tear, but it was enough to keep him out for the season if he was going to chase his NFL dreams. So there was that chance of this could go from bad to worse. And that's why I imagine a personal decision, but there was a chance for him to come back really late in the season. It wouldn't have done anybody any favors. You have KJ Winston, who would have been playing at 75% with the chance that, hey, you potentially ruin your rookie season, or even if you come back for college, you're starting in the middle of the season. So I think the decision that was made was best for everybody in the scheme of things. I mean, Winston does not miss tackles, so we call him a safety. He's essentially a linebacker playing safety, and he gives you the total skill set. He can give you coverage. He gives you speed. I mean, but I like him in terms of how he's able to attack the box. Yep. He's not afraid to come up and run defense. He can cover when you need him to, but his specialty is coming down to the box, making a tackle and being an extra linebacker to a point. Okay. And then he's athletic enough to cover the running back out of the backfield, or maybe you need to put him in the slot for a moment. Even though that isn't the best part of his game, you take him because he forces teams that, hey, you like to run the rock. Oh, but they seem a little bit, they're a little bit smaller because they got KJ Winston in there. They have an extra safety in there. And no, I mean, KJ Winston was arguably the best overall run defender for Penn State when he was playing at 100%. He allowed Penn State's defense to do so many different things, a variety of different things. Penn State was running a 4-2-5 because they had so many good defensive backs, and KJ Winston was one of them. I do wonder if, there's a lot of what ifs there. If KJ Winston plays a full season for Penn State this past year, maybe they get past Notre Dame. Maybe they're a little more challenging to Ohio State in that regular season game in a hypothetical championship. KJ Winston might have been the missing piece. So he's as versatile as they get, but I like him for his run defense and the way that the vision that he has on the football field.
Yeah, believe me, I get that. That's how we, like, Notre Dame fans kind of felt with like Benjamin Morrison not being able to play during that time. When you have certain guys that are just those playmakers and especially big parts of your defense, it really does factor in. One of the things, I was reading one of the draft profiles, and I loved the way they used the words in this. And they said he plays with controlled violence. And I loved that so much because, number one, that is just kind of, to me, like that monsters, like the monsters of the midway mentality. You like the violent players. You like the guys that will do extra, finish to the whistle, like not, they keep going in these plays. And I feel like sometimes you don't see that all the time now. But expand a little bit on what you feel like that means, this person describing him as that, and how that transfers over to the NFL.
Like I said, I mean, it goes back to the field of vision. It goes back to not being afraid to make a tackle, because that's just the nature of his game. Yeah. Is that he wants to make the tackle. He wants to go into the pile and make a play. He did not register a missed. I'm pretty sure you're going to have to double check with over the 3 years of his, or I guess 2, and then the partial for his junior season. But over the course of his, definitely for his sophomore season, because maybe there was one lodged in there in his freshman year, he did not register a missed tackle according to Pro Football Focus. Wow. So eventually the Madden rating will have him at 99 in his tackling rating. That's what it speaks volumes to, even though, because Chicago's known for linebackers and the toughness of the linebackers. So he's not necessarily Brian Urlacher, but it's that same sort of sense of guys that just aren't afraid to play gritty football. And that's KJ Winston. Jaquan Brisker does that too. Yeah. I want to see them add to Jaquan Brisker and what they do in the back end of the defense, and not say, let's replace one former Penn State player with another former Penn State player. You could have a dynamic safety duo with Jaquan Brisker and KJ Winston if the opportunity presents itself. And honestly, Jalen Reed as well. I got to throw out Jalen Reed too, because of he's more of a coverage safety, but he could play in the slot. You could, if you needed to, you could put him in the boundary, but KJ Winston and Jalen Reed had this chemistry that unfortunately we didn't get to see it all season because he wasn't available. But Jalen Reed is also somebody that maybe the Bears should consider if they're just looking for defensive backs to get in the room.
Did you ever see, or did they ever send Winston at all? Because I know it was something we saw a lot, especially with Jaquan Brisker his rookie season. He led our team with the most sacks. I think he had 7 sacks his rookie season. And he was like our leader sack getter, which you're not expecting that from a safety often. But was that ever something you saw there? Because it does seem like a Penn State thing.
So since they had Abdul Carter, and
they didn't really need to.
it was primarily focused with, okay, what stunts can we run with the linebacker? I mean, they'd send anybody. Daquan Hardy's, I can't remember where he's at right now. I know he was with the Bills for a portion of time. He was the slot cornerback for Penn State. I mean, he would get it was really dependent on the defense. And like I said, since they had went from Manny Diaz to Tom Allen, and then we didn't get to see KJ Winston play a full season, it's really difficult to say, okay, what was his, but in that time frame, it was mostly comprised of, okay, what stunts can we run with the linebackers, because we have a player like Abdul Carter. So KJ Winston could stay in that safety role, but they'd send him, periodically. He can do it. He just wasn't asked to do it a lot. Yeah.
Which that's what I figure. When you have a guy like Abdul Carter, you don't need a ton of help in that area. I want to go over to another. We're talking about linebackers. Kobe King is another name we're seeing on a lot of these draft boards. Also a little later. But the Bears are in a different spot. They have Tremaine Edmonds. You have TJ Edwards. So it's not like the linebacker group is something that is a heavy need. But they did just lose Jack Sanborn, who was kind of like their Sam linebacker for the majority of the time. Dennis Allen defenses are a little different, so it's not sure totally what to expect, but tell us a little bit about Kobe King. Like, where do you think he fits? Where is his place on a NFL defense?
He's a traditional Mike linebacker at this point in time. I'm not saying he can't do it or that he won't ever be able to do it, but right now, based on, I mean, the Notre Dame game, one of the differences, the reason. So it's nice to hear that you're a Notre Dame, because you understand what I'm referring to here, is that Kobe King is a liability in coverage. He is your typical 2-down linebacker, can stuff the run. He's very smart. He can see it, but maybe doesn't have necessary, it feels rich of me to say, but maybe doesn't necessarily have that extra gear of athleticism to keep up. So he's a developmental player at the NFL. I think he can become an everyday starter that racks up tackles in due time, and maybe he finds that speed to go and be a 3-down linebacker. But to see him as a special teams guy early on, maybe you get him in some late situations in games, because he's smart, he's cerebral, he reads offenses very well, and quickly took over as a tackling machine for Penn State at that Mike linebacker spot. But that's what he is. He's a Mike linebacker, 2-down player at this point in time. And the difference in that Notre Dame game was tight ends just continued to get open. And it was something that other opposing offenses, for whatever reason, maybe it's because Penn State's defense was good at masking it, or that nobody was looking. And Notre Dame happened to find that weakness. They challenged Kobe King in one-on-one coverage, and they won every single time. And that's one of the biggest differences from that game.
Yeah, it definitely was going back. And I remember, actually, we talked a lot about that on my show before, when we were talking about the coverage. And it's something that you're seeing now in the NFL, the kind of shift of defenses and how important it is to have linebackers who can drop back in coverage, because there are so many. You talk about the tight ends they're facing. You talk about just kind of quarterbacks now liking that mid-intermediate range of the field, and that becoming such an important part of so many games. That's why nickel corners also, we're seeing more and more nickel corners on the field at a consistent rate. The Bears just made Kyler Gordon the highest nickel corner in the NFL. So that's becoming a more and more, I think, prominent role, when before it was maybe you'll see the nickel corner 20% of the time. It's more and more. I don't think I could get off this podcast without at least talking a little bit about Abdul Carter. Again, unless the Bears trade up and they're absolutely in love and want to try and figure something out, I don't see a world where this happens. But when it comes to Abdul, this last year, they switched him over to that edge position this last year. And even with one arm in the Notre Dame game, I was like, this man's an absolute monster. It's wild to watch somebody be able to do what he can do, not even fully healthy. But what are your thoughts on Abdul when it comes to just that 1 year as a true pass rusher on the outside, compared to kind of what he did for the rest of the career?
It's how quickly he was able to learn, because he was a linebacker in a 4-3 defense, and then they say, hey, you're going to play defensive end full time for the first time. They just wanted to move somebody that is so good with his attacking style of defense. Penn State just wanted to get him closer to the line of scrimmage. It would have been the eventual progression with Micah Parsons too, but then COVID happened. Yeah. He opted out and focused on his draft status, and it is what it is. Not trying to blame anybody, but Penn State's wanted to do this with Micah Parsons, and then the blueprint was shifted to Abdul Carter. It's how quickly he was just able to get better. He went from somebody that, this move isn't working out. Some Penn State fans complained. I think a good chunk of them actually complained that Abdul Carter's not doing anything. This was stupid, moving back to linebacker. And then he became the best defensive end down the stretch in college football, and that's objective. That's not subjective. That second half of the season, he really took over. So if you want somebody that's versatile, you want somebody that maybe you could move him back to linebacker in a 4-3 defense. He can do it. But his best skill set is just getting him close to the point of the attack, put him on the line of scrimmage, have him disrupt things, get after the quarterback. That's his specialty, is chasing down the quarterback. I think it's worth it if he somehow happens to slide past 3. Maybe the Giants don't take him. Maybe Shedeur Sanders is the guy or something like that for them. They're looking for a franchise quarterback, whatever the case is. If Abdul Carter somehow gets past 3 with the New York Giants, I think it's worth the Bears making a phone call. I don't know their defensive end situation off the top of my head, but if there is a need for a pass rusher, he is arguably the best overall player in this draft. You are getting insane value, and that's how you win drafts, is getting insane value, and you get that with Abdul Carter if he somehow slides outside of the top 3.
Yeah, and that's what it'd be really hard. If there was a shot, it'd be really hard for me to say no to an Abdul Carter. And we talk a lot about this draft being there's only a few guys that are like the blue chip right away. You know, these are going to be the type of players that are going to make immediate impact on a team, no doubt. The rest, it kind of, especially at 10, I feel like the Bears are going to have to either reach a little bit or hope someone slides is what I kind of feel like that area is going to be, or maybe get to the point earlier, maybe not your biggest need, but a really good player at that. And when we're talking about our edges, it's Montez Sweat, obviously, on one side, and then they just signed Dio Ajingbo this last offseason too. I think their edge, I still think it needs some help, so I wouldn't be surprised if they still addressed it. And this edge class isn't the best edge class, I would say, as especially as you start getting a little deeper. So if you have a chance to get Abdul Carter, he is a game changer immediately, and it'd be really hard to pass on that. I did want to ask you, are there any other names? I know we went through most of them. I know wide receiver Julian Fleming's a name that some people have on their draft boards too. Obviously later too, more in like the 300th ranked prospect I'm seeing. But share a little bit about him, because I know that wide receiver, I think late in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears snag somebody.
Great work ethic. Somebody that's going to come in and compete every day. Like I've said the same thing about Kobe King, smart, cerebral, and it's not to say that Abdul Carter isn't, Julian Fleming, the way that he processes the game is so different. I imagine he was going to, if it didn't work out in the NFL, that he'll be back at Penn State or in college football soon enough as a grad assistant or some form of assistant coach. He is that smart. He has that kind of ability. I think he'll be a fantastic coach. Doesn't mean he can't, because the thing that he's always battled is injuries.
Yeah.
He's just been injured. Julian Fleming is not a bad football player, but he's just dealt with so many injuries during his time at Ohio State and at Penn State that it just caught up with him, whether he was never able to fully recover or those injuries just took a toll on him, that it took him back. Great blocking receiver. I would say that he is he's similar to Keenan Allen in a sense. Okay. If Julian Fleming maybe never dealt with the injuries, he could be that kind of receiver, because I'm not going, he's going to be Keenan Allen all over in prime time. But that's that solid route runner.
Yep. Great
avid run blocker, and that's what Keenan Allen was. And somebody that's going to put the team first. So, and just sees the football field very well. It's unfortunate, because just from being from Pennsylvania, rooting for Fleming as it was, even though he chose Ohio State, even though he chose the Buckeyes, but never lived up to that 5-star potential because of injuries.
Yeah. Those are unfortunate things. We've had the wide receiver when the Bears drafted Kevin White. That was like what we thought was going to be our future. And then injury. And it sucks when you see guys that you feel like have all the potentials to be a really good player, whether it's a wide receiver or whatever they're doing, and injury kind of mess that up. And we see it all the time in the NFL, which really sucks. But I do a quick one, because I did forget to ask about this. A lot of the things that revolving around Abdul Carter are maybe some of the more off the field stuff. What is your mindset in that world of people concerning about the locker room side of Abdul?
I mean, Abdul Carter is just a player that shows up to work every day. I've never heard of any locker room issues or that he's a problem player. It's mostly been the injuries. Yeah. The injuries and stuff. Well, his shoulder issue, and then I think he had the foot issue. I mean, in the Penn State media circle, we didn't even know about it. Obviously the shoulder injury, but apparently he was dealing with his foot issue. You wouldn't know based on the games. So that kind of also speaks to your question, is that you wouldn't know that he's hurt. You wouldn't know that he's injured. I mean, he played in that Orange Bowl game with half of an upper body.
Yeah.
He was dynamic. He was Penn State's best overall defender, playing at 50%. So Abdul Carter shows up to work, does what's necessary, puts his head down. That's it. If he ends up in Chicago, I mean, that's kind of the Chicago football mentality kind of thing. I like his personality, because I mean, he wears his personality it's good. It's good for the sport. Yeah. It's somebody that, doesn't showboat necessarily, but it's not this quiet humility. It's this, I can talk and I can back it up as well without being egregious. So there is that swagger to him as well, and he can be the face of a franchise defense. That's what you're getting in Abdul Carter.
Which we'd love that. Jaquan Brisker has that personality too. It's funny, because it's like Brisker's definitely someone who will chirp a little bit. He's on Twitter. He'll argue with fans on Twitter sometimes, which some people don't like. To me, I love it. He's like passionate about what he does. He's very vocal about believing he can be one of the better safeties in the NFL. And when he's on the field, he proves it too. And I like those players. I like those players that have, the difference between the confidence and arrogance. And I think when you have that true confidence I think that's what you see out of Abdul Carter and Jaquan Brisker. It just takes it up to another level, and it adds that leader that you do need in defensive rooms. But Zach, I really appreciate your time. We will see what ends up happening on draft day. Only a little over a couple weeks away now. So we will find out. But thank you for your time again, Zach Seyko, for the Locked On Nittany Lions. And I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Taylor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.